Hi, my name is Ashit Ram, and today I am joined by Abdullah Koker, and we are the co hosts of the podcast The Second Curve. This podcast focuses on the second curve of learning that people often go through in their career, along with stories and experiences that shaped who they are today. Our goal is to take these stories and share them, along with uncovering what the next big thing will be in their industry. And today's episode is going to be, partnered with a company called Arogya, and we're going to have our second episode with Suresh. How are you doing today, Suresh?
Doing great. Thank you both for having me.
Let's just get started. With it. So today we're going to talk about AI literacy, as this is something that your company's focused a lot on, and we wanted to just, off the bat, ask for anybody who doesn't know what is AI literacy and how does it compare with other forms of literacy, whether it be technological literacy or maybe in a specific skill.
Yeah, I think it's a great question. So I think there's two terms we want to start with. Literacy is what we know, like the ability to read and write. But there's also another term called numeracy, which I think is also relevant here. This has to do with the ability to understand and reason with math and numbers. And I think this is important because when we are talking about AI literacy, it's actually a combination of these two plus another element. And I'm going to dive into that right now. So I think it's sometimes easy to think about this in what like AI literacy is not. So AI literacy is not the awareness of AI tools. AI literacy is not the awareness of prompting mechanisms with AI. AI literacy has nothing to do with like how to, what tools to use for what purposes. That's just awareness of AI. What AI literacy is more like is when we think about the fundamentals of literacy and numeracy, it's the ability to discern facts or knowledge from something. And then in line with numeracy, it's the ability to reason about the mathematical or scientific, underlying argument that it makes and come to a reasonable conclusion. And so what AI literacy really is your ability to navigate a world with AI independent of tools. And it's your ability to reason and leverage AI towards like the proliferation of your own, individual self. And I think this is like a really interesting concept because in today's market right now, we're so obsessed with, what tools are you using? Have you, have you taken the Claude courses or like, are you using, the latest OpenClaw? But the reality is none of that really matters because we're going to be seeing so many new tools and so many new ways of using AI. But what is critical is the ability to reason about AI. When is it telling you the truth or not? And your ability to learn and discern new facts from AI to be able to solve future problems. So that's sort of a verbose way of explaining it, but it's a combination of literacy and numeracy with another layer for making it effective. Yeah, so that's the initial answer.
Yeah. Going on from there, I think that was a pretty good explanation of what, AI literacy is. And like one thing we've always thought about is like, what do most people get wrong about using or like learning to use AI for their work? Because I know you have a large involvement. So when you see people work, what is like one thing or two things that you see that they get wrong about using AI?
Yeah, I think that the biggest thing I see is like a flip of what I call like the correct order of operations. Like let's say you were trying to create like an argument, like an essay about some topic. Okay, in today's day, you use AI to do this. And what I see a lot of people do is they first, put in a prompt and they just say, oh, go write me a first draft. And then they take that first draft and they critique it and they modify it. And then, you keep modeling it towards your essay. I think that's the complete opposite way of how you want to think with AI. What I suggest is a flip of those order of operations. The first step is critiquing your thought with AI. Right. So this kind of comes into like the discernment, like challenge the AI, observe what like arguments it gives to you, ask questions about the arguments, find the faults in those arguments. So before you even write a draft or have AI generate anything, you've essentially like cross-analyzed everything that's going on. You've thought about the problem. And then the last step is the generation. And that generation is so easy, right? Like you can go into ChatGPT or Claude and say, write me an essay about, World War II. It'll go write it. But that essay will be so generic and bland and it won't be making a point. But if instead you talk about specific aspects of World War II and you challenge it, you poke holes in its argument, and you keep going, you put your thought into it, then you've got a nice context window that's actually more in line with what you're trying to communicate, and then you write the essay. And this is a simple example. You can apply this to anything. Like, let's say you're building an app. You don't start by just saying, build me the framework for a health or nutrition app. You start thinking about the problem that you're trying to solve. Who are you trying to help? what features matter. And if you have that initial back and forth with the AI for, I would actually recommend you do it as long as you can. Then that generation step becomes tailored to your specific need, and it produces a much better output. So that's the biggest mistake I see right now. It's a flip in the order of operations.
Yeah, I totally agree with you, and I've heard this actually a couple times before, where AI is really good at giving you exactly what you want, but the issue is when people don't know exactly what they want. Saying build me a health and nutrition app is so generic. There's millions of those out there. But when you actually get those specifications down, it can give you what you want, and you'll be more satisfied with your result. An analogy I hear sometimes is that, people are worried that, it's going to take my job, or if everybody's using AI, how do I stand out? And I've heard the analogy that it's to be used like a hammer, right? You and somebody else get the same hammer, but you know when to use it, you know how to use it, right? It's the same nail that you're using the hammer on, but you can do it a lot more effectively than the other person. That's the thing that makes the difference. Like I've heard this before as well with jobs becoming obsolete. When the calculator was invented, people who did, mental math, it's no longer as useful to be good at quick mental math. You still should know how to do it, but you have a calculator. So now you can tackle bigger things. The calculator doesn't do the whole job for you. So now it seems with AI, the generation step is streamlined. It's expedited. However, the planning phase, the getting the, business terms to technical terms, the, establishing what you actually want from the generation, it's been a shift, because now this only takes a couple hours, not a couple weeks. You can spend a lot more time on this to make sure that this is higher quality.
Yeah. That was a nice explanation. You touched upon a few things, right? Like you mentioned the math being replaced by a calculator and it no longer being a necessity in like the workplace. And I completely agree. Like if I was a stockbroker or managing someone's fund, like now I'm not doing math by hand, or if I'm an accountant, I'm not filling out like, an accounting book. But the thing is I'm using the tool to do it faster. But the precursor to that is that you as the human, in this case, you're still aware of the foundational math, right? So, and that's actually important for this concept of numeracy. Even though we're delegating that task to AI, we still need to be capable enough to discern when it is doing the correct or incorrect things. And so I think this is important because it's a double-edged sword. When in one hand, we're saying delegate the things to AI where it is better. But on the other hand, we're saying you still need to know these things so that it doesn't fool you. And both of these things are true. And so I think this like dichotomy of give it the work, but don't forget how you do it yourself is like a challenge that we're hoping to help people solve in Arogya, right? Like give you enough of a foundational baseline in addition to your current schooling, but then show you how to like sprint with this tool now without letting it, lead you down the wrong path. So I think that's I'm glad you brought up the concept of the calculator. It's a great example.
Yeah, and I'm curious on your thoughts about this. I've heard some people describe using AI as having an intern or a junior developer. And I want to know your thoughts on that. Do you agree? Do you disagree? Are there some nuances to this?
Yeah, I mean, hey, I actually like to think of it as, it is artificial intelligence, right? So, okay, I want to be careful how I use this analogy, but let's say you have a company and you have a structure of people with different jobs. You have a structure of intelligence executing tasks. That is what a company is. And there are varying degrees of intelligence or effectiveness that are required for each role in that company. So, now when we scale, or I guess we transition that same logic to the world of AI, in some ways we are compounding and replacing certain job functions with an artificial version of that intelligence. So this is all to say that yes, you could view it as an intern, but actually I think that's a reduction of what it really is. You're viewing it as a replacement or an accelerant to specific business functions. And so honestly, the best type of individual in a world of AI is a leader. And a leader could be the CEO, a leader could be a manager. It's just someone whose job is to manage and produce output with a team of intelligence. And that's not that much different in the world pre-AI, right? So I will, that's actually a great thing you bring up. I think this is part of AI literacy is like, how do you manage not just agents, but intelligence, intelligence that you can multiply or repurpose to different tasks so that you accomplish larger goals. And that type of knowledge is what's really going to make you powerful in the world of AI.
Yeah, I totally agree. And you touched upon one thing, like how you do that in Arogya, like how you help people, understand how to use their prior education to, build up what they want to ask AI and then have it generate. So you want to go into more of that and talk about like what you do specifically to help people and your like different domains in your company?
Yeah, happy to. So I'll say a lot of this is experimental on our end because we've got a base vision and an understanding of what is and isn't important, but AI keeps moving really fast and we're learning as we go. So here are a few things that I've learned. There's no replacement for real world education or learning. So what I mean by that is like even if an AI can do math, there's no replacement for you putting in the effort to learn the math. Like the AI can help you learn it, but you as the vehicle to your own learning cannot replace your physical world learning. So we very much embody this in Arogya. So for example, we have students that are mixed between what we call like business development and AI engineering, just the two tracks we've set up for right now. But our business development interns, their goal is to learn how to speak to people, how to position and learn or like research about a business, identify problems. I mean, it technically would be trivial for us to do some AI research and just send flyers out to businesses, but that would replace that real world learning that people cannot get in another way. They have to learn from the real world. So in some ways, we're like back to basics for very specific skill sets to ensure that we build up that strength from real world learning that can then be compounded and accelerated with AI. And we do this all over the place. So like I mentioned, the other major track we have right now is AI engineering. Right now, if you pull up Fable and you use the right buzzwords, like you can build a pretty secure, strong system with like role-based access and decent security. Absolutely. But the thing is if I just gave a prompt to students that they just started with and built with, they would miss all of that real-world learning that is behind that. So we don't let them skip any of it. We go through like kind of old school training about like what does it mean to be a system? What is like a network call? What is like good and bad API design? And granted, I'll say this, we go through these concepts really quickly. It's almost like a 1 hour lesson for a concept that in like the old day would have been a month or its own course on its own. But we try not to skip the real world learning just because AI is good at it. So the goal is that we want people aware and strong in these skills so that when they delegate it to AI, they actually know what they're doing. And then this is what helps with that numeracy. So now you can reason about the world without it fooling you. And that's really important to us.
I love that you mentioned that it's a little old school. It's kind of like backtracking, and it can seem counterintuitive to a lot of companies. And I really like the way you approach these things, because smart companies will realize that if we replace all of our junior developers with AI, in a couple of years we have no senior developers, and they don't know how our systems work, and they aren't accustomed to these things. And there's only one way to really get that solid foundation, and that is to have that real world learning experience. And it's a struggle for students as well, because it is very tempting as a student, because AI can do this in 3 seconds. Why should I have to bang my head against the wall and figure this out when I'm not going to have to do this? I've heard this a lot.
Yeah, I mean, I'll be honest, it's hard. I have to convince the team to put in the work to do this. But I think now that this batch of students has been about a month, they're starting to see the benefit. And the way it benefits them is they're more confident in their discussions. They're more confident when people ask them how they're using AI. It's not like, oh, I just used this prompt. It's like, here are the concepts and I'm able to build this thing in like 2 days and I know what I'm doing. So, I'm with you. It is a challenge for sure, especially when you see the vastness of amazing things that people are just creating with no knowledge or little to no knowledge. But I actually appreciate you guys letting me speak. I'm going to give you another detail here. You've probably heard this, is AI is an amplifier. And I fundamentally believe in this. It multiplies whatever we do. So every inefficiency, every incorrectness, every misunderstanding gets amplified as well. And that's the type of stuff that you don't always notice it right away. Like in a company, when you have people building stuff, you don't always notice the mistakes right away. But if now we're building 10 times faster with AI, and we are aware that this amplifies the mistakes, when those mistakes appear, it becomes super painful and costly to fix them. And frankly, this is what companies are experiencing today. There was this article by the Harvard Business Review that came out saying that like 95% of companies that have been using AI have not found a productive output for it. But the real math behind it is not that there was no productivity. It's that the productivity was wiped out by the mistakes that in its productivity that needed more work to then fix. So it became counterproductive. And I think the solution to that is not more AI agents and not more loops trying to prevent it. It's actually just a stronger foundation so that when you amplify it, it doesn't have mistakes in the first place. Yeah. So it's a hard battle to fight to get people to focus on basics, but I actually think that's how we like make AI actually meaningful. Yeah.
Yeah, I've heard this before where it's like as an amplifier, you're completely right. And I've heard this before like as well, where if you were gonna write crappy code, you now can do it 10 times faster. And like and I think this is what separates, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. This is what separates vibe coding and using AI as a tool, where you're talking about that confidence, where somebody doesn't go, oh, AI did this for me. It's I used AI to make this. I know what it's doing. I caught its mistakes. I was able to correct it when it went, veered off course. And this is something that it built, that I had it built, right? And I'm able to understand it, and I'm able to be confident when I present.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I mean, I don't want to reduce the statement you're making, but I want to draw a parallel to something that's already existed in the real world. Like managers in a tech company, this was supposed to be their job. It's supposed to be empower a team to do the right things so that the team that's, reporting to you builds something productive and quality. And as the manager, your goal is to direct and fix and repair and keep everyone on track. The only thing that's changed now is the builders that were at the bottom now need to become the manager and need to now take on this managerial role. And I'll go back to the same analogy. The difference between a good and a bad manager in the old day was actually knowledge, in my opinion. A good manager is aware of the problems that the team faces so that they can actually direct them. A bad manager is just trying to get people to like check tasks off on a list. So if you use AI to just check a bunch of tasks off, you're doing the not quote unquote bad manager role. But if you are doing the quote unquote good manager role, you're aware of the landscape, you're aware of the problems, you're empowering this team of artificial intelligence to build something for you, you're directing it in the right ways and preventing it from going down the wrong tracks. Now that's like the most powerful individual in the world of AI. And I bring this analogy back because it's something that we've already had before. It's just now we need to do more of that in the correct ways so that when we amplify it with AI, we don't create a bunch of nonsense. Yeah. So it's like both an old skill and something that we like more people need to adopt now.
Yeah, definitely. I really like the way you said that. Like, I thought that was pretty interesting. Like, you talked about like a good versus bad manager, but like, it's like really, I think you like implied that it's like pretty easy to be a bad manager, like to like look like a bad manager, because if you just keep checking off lists, like different check marks through AI, it's just not useful.
Not useful,
But
right?
yeah. Yeah, and where do you see like AI literacy going in like the next emerging fields in like 10 to 15 years? So where do you see it going in like, renewable energy and like, fields that are, people are, using more, or people are getting employed in more. So like in those types of
Yeah.
fields.
I'm gonna be honest, man. I think it's a green open field. It's hard to talk about where we're gonna be in 10 to 15 years. But here's what I do believe. I think we're about to experience, or we are, and we're going to continue to experience a massive growth in knowledge, just period, right? We're about to have a really knowledgeable tool as a commodity. So it's not to say that that's all the knowledge that there is. This now becomes something to accelerate future knowledge, whether it be medical cures, science for growing stuff, new technologies for batteries, like all sorts of stuff is going to come out of this. And so what I think needs to happen is we need to restructure, and as a society, we need to determine what is really relevant for people to learn. How do we effectively monitor and measure that people have learned it? And then how do we then empower those people who are now learning things faster to continue learning? So like we already see this now. Like when I, 10, 15 years ago, when I was in high school, I did not learn computer science. But now when I look around, most ninth graders have taken a computer science course. And so I think we're going to see this on a more accelerated basis. Like computer science might become something you learn in elementary school. And then you might be doing like quantum physics in high school, which is something I did in college. But that's where I see this going. I see a lot of stuff being brought down to younger ages because we're now going to be able to learn things faster. But to enable that, we need to figure out what is really meaningful to learn. And then how do we measure that people actually learned it? And then now I'll answer your question about where I see this going in 10 to 15 years. I think we're going to see an absolute explosion in productivity and innovation. I think we're going to see an explosion in the number of companies and organizations. So logically, like now that, like I just said, take that manager role, right? If now one person is a manager of like 100 employees, instead of just being one employee, the size of companies can be reduced to less humans, and there's more of these knowledgeable, agents, LLMs, artificial intelligence in general. And so I envision an explosion in innovation, an explosion in the number of companies, and then a complete shifting in what students learn at which ages, and shifting down. So people are going to be learning things way sooner than we've ever learned.
Yeah, I really like this focus on learning. I think like the two main things you touched on about learning. First off, what do you learn? And then how do we know that you learned it? I think when there's so much information out there, establishing what's important to learn is very important. And then having that metric of, did I actually learn it? It's very easy to convince yourself with AI that I learned something. It's very easy to say.
Yeah, it'll hype you up. It'll make you think you're a demigod. Yeah.
Yeah. But, if you didn't have it there, can you still do it, right? And it's almost like a little bit of a graduation that now that I've done it once myself, I can use this to expedite the process. And I really do agree with this explosion of innovation. We've seen the technology go completely from, CapEx to OpEx. Like we've seen, you got an idea, spin it up today, get customers tomorrow. Now we can go back and we can see, okay, because you're able to spin up your idea so fast, how good your idea actually was becomes very apparent, like very quickly. And you don't have to put in, 2 months, 3 months developing software, and you can really get it to the customer fast. And I think that ties in, we talked about good managers, bad managers. It's almost like good innovators, bad innovators. Not to say that anybody's a bad innovator, but there's levels to it. And if you have a better knowledge base, that you've proven that you have the rigor to really create something, not even just technically, but something that someone would actually want to consume or use, right? Anybody can spin up an app, but get someone to use it, that's a whole other beast. That is going to be very important in the next, of course, nobody can predict the next 10, 15 years. Hell, nobody can predict the next 2 months, right? We don't know what's going to happen. But it seems like the macro trend is definitely pushing towards the quality of your ideas and your planning and how that directly translates into what you can do.
I agree with you with a small nuance. And so the part I agree with is like the end-to-end nature of what you just said. So I think you're representing quality idea as like, can it be a good product? Can it be a good business? Will people use it? Can you sell it? And that I absolutely agree. Like the market right now is screaming for people that have like if I focus on CS, they're screaming for full stack people that can build something end to end. But actually that's not even correct. What they really want is someone that can take it from inception, concept, idea, delivery, and build a business, because you're using AI to help you do all aspects of it. So I fundamentally agree with that. Like the skill set now is not just one domain. It's the vastness to get something from end to end. So it's like a meaningful part of society.
Definitely.
The part that I will sort of insert, is a little bit of a challenge, is just from my own experience. It's when you're trying to launch a product or a business, there's two big variables that you have no control over. One is like timing, and one is like what the market wants. Meaning that you're sort of guessing in the early days until you can find metrics or proxies that suggest that what you're doing is correct. Like the best example of this that always makes me mad is like when I was in college, there was this app called Yo, and all it did was you import your contacts and you click their name and it would send them a text message called Yo. And this thing sold for like over $1 million. And so, I mean, I'm not saying that that's a value adding product, but what I'm trying to get at is that sometimes what we think is like quality and good is just like human nature is so, I don't even know what the right word is, that you can't always predict these things. So what I suggest is actually the flip, is kind of like it favors experimentation. It favors deployment. It favors just like direct real world testing. And if you've got that ability to take something end to end, like build it, test it, sell it, market it, all that stuff. Even if you've got like a really crappy idea, sometimes you can actually build a decent business. And so that the underlying ability to do things end to end is what's really important. And then the quality of your ideas is important, but it's like the next, like you can get away with a bad idea. And then if you got a decent one, which helps you build a strong business model, that takes you to the next level.
Now that you say that, I do actually agree. And it reminds me of something that I heard where if sometimes you don't know what to do. You don't know what's next. And the reason you don't is because you haven't earned the right to know. You need to try things. You need to just get stuff out there, and the market will tell you. And like you'll figure it out. I've heard this in content creation as well. Like just try 100 things. Whatever one thing works, triple, quadruple down on it. So, and I
Right.
guess because that delivery time has been shortened so much, experimentation is rewarded. Because the downside is not I lose $2 million. It's I lost maybe like my weekend and like $10 in tokens, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, I completely agree. And this is now taking the conversation in a slightly different direction. It gets to where I see the next 10 to 15 years going. I think the AI is just going to favor people who go out in the real world and experiment. And so this is the small vibe coder and entrepreneur. This is not the large corporation. Large corporations operate on relatively large build cycles, though some of them operate like startups. And I do think that's their only way of surviving. But they report to executives. They have strict like budgeting standards. They have the biggest disadvantage right now. They have the advantage of money to invest in AI, fine, but from a like literally with just talking about this conversation, they have all the negatives in what we just spoke about. So I actually think the small vibe coder in a community that knows like the 100 people who may use his product is way more capable right now than like Google, Meta, Facebook. And it just doesn't feel that way, but I think like the world is about to just prove it relatively quickly. Yeah.
Yeah, that was pretty interesting. I like your last part of it, like how it would go into like the next 10 to 15 years.
Yeah.
But yeah, I did like this conversation about like AI literacy and like its importance, and then how you use it in your company, and then also how it'll be the next 10, 15 years. So Abdul, do you have any more information? I like the analogies you used as well. They're very
Awesome.
interesting.
Yeah, I think that the framing of this conversation was done really well when you introduced what was not AI literacy and almost a very clear distinction between what is actually learning and using the tool and what is like kind of this facade of I'm getting stuff done. And I think because it's such a it's such a fine line between them, but
Yeah,
there's a
really.
massive impact once you actually start producing things.
Right.
But yeah, this was a great conversation, and we'd love to have you on for more. We could
Another one.
totally go into. I'd love to have a whole conversation about not necessarily what large corporate companies are doing wrong, but like an in-depth conversation as to how that single vibe coder can outperform these companies because of such a short build cycle, and because a whole thing on like experimentation and the benefits of crashing and burning and then trying again.
Right. Yeah, I would love to have a whole conversation on that. Yeah, may anger a few people, but that's like one of my favorite. So it's absolutely. Yeah.
All right.
But yeah.
Thank you, though. We appreciate it.
Oh, absolutely. I
Yeah.
appreciate you both. I love the questions that you're asking, and you give me a chance to speak too. So that's always great.
All right. Yeah. Thank you so much.
Take care, guys.